food. I'm not eating their frankenfish, and I'm not eating the rat pigs.
Well,
I just
no,
raise my own.
that's admirable, John, and I agree with that. But how do we reach the people that are going into that supermarket, that work 8 hours a day, that go home, they run down to the supermarket for an hour and come back and turn on the TV? How do we reach them? They're not telling you this on television. The newscasters aren't telling you this.
No, they're not. The corporate media is controlled by the government and special interest groups, so they're only reporting what they're told to report, which of course is nothing. It's just garbage, and they don't talk, about what's going on in the true reality of the world. There's very few issues out there that do.
Speaking of the true reality of the world, I've said that there's been an attack on our farmers probably for 100 years, ever since the Federal Reserve took over handling our money. Suddenly we were paying farmers not to grow stuff, and then they stole our number one cash crop above cotton, above corn. They stole hemp from us. They took it out. No, you can't grow hemp in this country anymore, but you can grow it in Canada, you can grow it in China, you can grow it in Russia. What about that? And this came after they made our grandfathers, our great uncles, into criminals because they were making the corn to run their tractors and Model A's and Model T's on. Suddenly they become bootleggers and moonshiners.
Well, and it's still like that today. Even down to moonshine, you can have beer and wine that you can make, but you can't make one drop of ethanol to run your lawnmower, for instance, because they want that tax money. It's all about money. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about anybody else but that control and that money. And that's where they outlawed hemp. It was to do with money. The same thing with ethanol alcohol. It has to do with money. They want that tax revenue and stuff.
I was trying, when I published my first magazine, which was High Country, High Adventure for Today's Cowboy, out in Placerville, California. A guy named Harry Black worked for me, and he was involved with trying to get ethanol started up in Montana. And I guess Archer Daniels Midland just moved in and came in with the government and took it all over and closed down any private ethanol projects.
Oh, yeah. But, Montana's really getting on the bandwagon like Oklahoma is. Even more so than Oklahoma. I really respect Montana because they're making all these laws. And matter of fact, they're passing through the legislation that if a federal agent comes into that state and actually tries to enforce a federal law against the state law, that federal agent can be arrested and go to jail for 2 years. So, and they're putting that in their own personal laws, their own state laws. So they're really telling the government to back the hell off. Because, see, the people control the state, and the state can go and tell the government. I don't think the people could ever get the government to do anything. I really don't. What you have to do is start with your state, with your state legislation, your town, your county, your state, and then force your state to force government to back off. That's the way our founding fathers meant it to be. Instead of the government trying to tell the state what to do and tell us what to do. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
That's right. It's the
10th
Amendment.
Has exceeded their authority under the 10th Amendment, and they're making laws and passing legislation that they have no power to do. And like you brought up the Federal Reserve, that's a private bank system. And in our laws, it even states that you cannot have a private industry or a foreign country control or print our U.S. dollar. And they did. And they are. They're still doing it.
Yeah, Yeah, well, the awareness of the Federal Reserve is growing a little bit, especially since Bush, as he was going out the door, handed them $2 trillion a year tax money. I mean,
Exactly.
your grandchildren will never pay off that debt, and that amount of money could have paid everybody's mortgage in the country.
Yes, but if everybody got together and forced the states to force the government to audit the Federal Reserve from day one, you would find not only are they traitors to the American people, but they have committed such fraud and such theft that if they had to pay back every single dollar with interest, we would not only not have a federal debt, but we would have a whole lot of money sitting there as well. I mean, that's how I look at it.
These are the same people. And our founding father Thomas Jefferson warned us: if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, they and the corporations that grow up around them, and we're talking about big pharma, big agriculture, big defense, and big oil. Your children will grow up homeless in the land that we conquered, and that's exactly what's happened. 1 million families out on the streets right now, and the banksters are throwing $1 million parties, giving $1 million bonuses out.
I know. I was talking earlier, and I says, wait a minute, how can you run a corporation or a big company and make it go bankrupt and be paid millions and millions of dollars in bonuses from the government if it wasn't intentional? I mean,
it's beyond me. I mean, to me, this is just common sense. If you see somebody, go into a bank and rob it, I mean, shouldn't you report it? Shouldn't you do something about it? And that's exactly what these people have done. They have stolen from the American people, and they've been doing that for 100 years.
Yes, and no different than the tax law joke. There is no law stating that a individual has to pay federal income tax. That was meant for corporations, and it was voluntary. And then for some reason, everybody got used to it and wanted to help out to rebuild the country. And then it just all of a sudden it's mandatory, and there is no law. There has been many tax agents that has actually researched it, and there is no actual law. But here people go to jail all the time for tax evasion. It's just fraud. There's so much fraud going on in this country with special interest groups.
I've had Lynn Meredith on here. I've had Lynn Meredith on my show. I've had Irwin Schiff on my show, and both of them are sitting in prison for telling the people exactly what you just said. There is no law.
Exactly, and there was a reward out and to actually show the law. If you could show the law, it was like a $250,000 or $500,000. And this really high-ranking tax auditor took, and I mean really researched, thinking, boy, I'm going to make this money. And they worked at it and worked at it and worked at it and finally said, there is no actual law. Nobody can see it. And the tax code, they'll bring up the tax code, that huge, monstrous tax code book, and no, that's the tax code. Where is the actual law? Just show the law. But they won't, because it doesn't exist. Just like, show us Obama's birth certificate, the long form. Well, they can't, because if they did, you would find out that he is an illegal alien, an undocumented worker. He's not actually the president, and the government has committed fraud on the American people.
I mean, we've got people that have tried this in court, and let's see what happened to the woman that heard the cases that ruled in favor of Obama. I think her name was Kagan. She's on the ballot there for the Supreme Court now. So You know.
Well, yeah, and there's no way you're going to spend millions of dollars to seal every record. I mean, juvenile record, driver's license, any schools, visas, anything. If you had not